Hello and welcome to Living Well with Robin Stoloff, empowering you to live a healthier life. Let's face it, it is not always easy to be an optimist, especially right now. I saw a quote the other day that said, when someone asks if my glass is half full or half empty, I tell them that I'm just happy to have a glass. And that seems like where we all are right now. Just happy for the little things in life, trying to get through this tumultuous time with the pandemic, social unrest, and our lives being turned upside down. But all of that really pales in comparison to what my guest today has gone through in her young life. Sabrina Wang is a two-time leukemia survivor, the recipient of a bone marrow transplant, and she is also living with a rare, progressive, and irreversible lung condition. Welcome, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you, Robin, for having me.
I am not even really sure how I connected with you. I was online and somehow I saw your website and I began reading your story and I was so intrigued by it and I just had to speak with you. It's called The Budding Optimist, Inspiring Positive Change for a Healthy and Happy Life. And it's so aligned with my mission, something I've been doing my entire life. And I'm just so glad that we've connected. Let's wind it all back and start from the beginning. You had some challenges growing up. Tell us all about that.
Well, I wasn't born into a very happy home, let's just, to say the least. My parents had a very tumultuous marriage. They were married to each other twice, no less. And their second marriage was very chaotic. There was a lot of domestic abuse. And so it was a very unsafe, I would say, uncomfortable situation for both myself and my mother. Fortunately, they were able to separate when I was about 16. But pretty soon after they separated, when I was about 19, I was diagnosed with leukemia for the first time.
Oh my gosh. So, and as a child, you were always afraid or worried about these types of things. Isn't that right?
Right, I was. And, that's another part of my anxiety as well. Not only was I, having these issues at home, I was having a lot of challenges with anxiety. I was always a really worrisome child. I would fret about things that, symptoms in my bodies that were common and normal, and my mind would spin it into something else, right? I remember going to the doctor one time because, a part of my foot was a little bit swollen. And I was just looking at her and said, is this foot cancer? And my doctor just looked at me and said, you need to, chill out a little bit, basically, is what she said to me. Yeah. I still remember that to this day.
But this was real. This was a real diagnosis of leukemia.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. So, at that time, I didn't really have any symptoms. I think the only symptom I could think of that could be related to leukemia was, a couple weeks before I was diagnosed, I had these pinhead bruises all over my arms. I thought it must have been like from a suntan or something because I had gone to the beach and I didn't really pay any attention to it. And I really went in for like a routine blood work because I was having, issues with my period at the time. I thought, honestly, I thought I was pregnant or something.
Oh my gosh.
And so I went in for a routine blood work, and I remember it was a Saturday. And that afternoon, I got a call from the doctor who issued me the blood work, and she basically said, there appears to be something wrong with your bone marrow functioning. And for some reason, I just knew it was leukemia at the time because, I was used to watching a lot of movies like, A Walk to Remember or something like that. And they had leukemia in there. So I knew what leukemia was, and I knew it impacted your bone marrow functioning. So I just broke down. I remember I crashed to the floor and I screamed into the phone to her, and I said, are you saying I have leukemia? I just repeated that over and over. And, she finally calmed me down and said, you need to go to the hospital in about, an hour. We have a bed ready for you. And I was admitted that night. And started treatment. That started like a round of assessment the next day, and pretty much started treatment a few days later.
And you were how old?
I was 19 at the time.
19, to be going through something like this. So how long were your
Right.
treatments?
It was a shock.
How long did you have to be treated?
So the first time that I had leukemia, I had treatments about 7 or 8 months. It was. I can't remember the exact number of rounds of chemotherapy I had because there were so many, but it was about 5 or 6 rounds in total.
And what was going on in your life at that time? Were you in school? What were you doing?
Yes, I was attending university at the time. I was diagnosed the summer after my first year was completed.
Wow. So did you have to leave school?
Yes, unfortunately, I had to leave school because with leukemia, I don't know if you know much about the disease, it impacts your immune system. So I couldn't be anywhere near crowds. I had to be really careful with, the people that I was seeing, or, being really careful about the infections and germs, all that stuff. So I wouldn't be able to attend school at that time, even if I wanted to.
So much you were going through at such a young age. Did you have family near you to help?
I had my mother, and I had my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband.
Oh, that's a good story. I like that. So he stuck with you through that. That's just wonderful.
Yes, he really did. He really did.
So you had a good result. You were feeling better, and then what happened?
So after 7 or 8 months of treatment, they declared me cancer free, and I went back to school. I was feeling good. During that time when I was in remission and I went back to school, I really worked on building up my physical health, because I knew for some reason I knew at the back of my head that this could come back and haunt me again, right? And while I was going through the motions of going back to school, I was also quite worried about the cancer returning. I wasn't really in a good mind space at the time. I was constantly worried about the cancer returning. There was a period of time when I, every 5 minutes I would check my arms to look for signs of for bruises and things, for just any symptoms or signs that my leukemia had returned.
I think everyone could understand that, I mean, you're concerned about it.
Yeah, exactly. And lo and behold, about a year and a half after my first diagnosis, unfortunately, when I went back for another blood test, they found that my white blood cells had decreased to a point where it became really strange, and they didn't know what was going on. So we did another, bone marrow biopsy. They couldn't explain why my blood count was dropping so drastically. They said, we'll recheck in a couple of months to see what was going on. And after a couple of months, we did the recheck, and they said, you know what, it looks like your leukemia has returned. And at this point, more chemo is not going to do it. We really need to have a bone marrow transplant. So I had my bone marrow transplant in August of 2009.
And how did that go?
You know what? Before the transplant, I was really, really worried because, again, I went online and I'm advising everybody who's diagnosed with any type of, chronic or serious illness, do not research your disease online, because
that's
really
not going to happen, because that's what everyone does, and it's true.
Yeah, that's what I do too. But it does not end well every time.
Yes.
But anyway, so I was really anxious about the bone marrow transplant, but luckily it went quite well. I received the transplant on August 23rd. 2009, and about 9 days later, the bone marrow started engrafting. So engrafting is when the bone marrow cells from the donor starts to work in your body and start to produce new healthy cells, right? And about 9 days later, my body just started to produce new healthy blood cells again,
Oh,
which
you
is
must have
amazing
been
because
so, after going through all of that, what was going through your mind when you found that out?
I, I, I was in shock because I was told that it normally takes about at least, 2 to 3 weeks for engrafting to happen. I was expected to stay in the hospital for at least a month. I knew people who have stayed in the hospital for like up to 2 or 3 months because, their body hasn't engrafted yet or hasn't, recovered enough for them to leave. And yet, I was out of the hospital in less than 3 weeks, which was like amazing. Everybody was talking about it. All the patients, all the doctors, and all the
Wow.
nurses were, they were congratulating me. They couldn't
Oh,
believe it.
that is just such good news. And then you started feeling better after that?
It was a progressive, recovery, right? Like I would have loved it if I could just, all of a sudden, gone back to my normal life. But it took me about a year and a half to 2 years for me to, go back to school and really reinsert myself into society like I did before. So it was a progressive process.
And you didn't let it stop you, though. You finished your degree. You ended up getting married.
Hmm.
Tell us all about that.
That's right.
Where did you graduate, and what did you major in?
I graduated from the University of British Columbia. I majored in business with a specialization in human resources management, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm a human resources professional, and I got married to my boyfriend who stuck to me by all this. We got married in 2018.
And he's a good guy, and you're happy today. But that wasn't the end of the story. You had something else
No,
happen.
no.
Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how life goes, right? It goes up and down. And, in 2017, I was, as part of, the long-term bone marrow transplant process, after a few years, they do all these tests on you to make sure that you're okay, right? And I was a star survivor. I had I had no complications that were major. I was pretty much, I was off of the immunosuppressant drugs, which they give you after your bone marrow transplant. I was off of that medication about, 8 months after the transplant, and I was progressing really well. So nobody knew I had an underlying condition from the transplant. But, at the end of 2016, early 2017, I went for a routine lung function test, which they do on all, long-term survivors. And it was discovered that my lung function had dropped significantly. And it was it dropped to a level where it's about, 60% of someone's lung capacity of someone my age, right? And so I had to have more tests to find out what was going on. And I was finally diagnosed with something called bronchiolitis obliterans, which happens to a small percentage of bone transplant survivors. And what it is basically is the donor cells, the donor cells attacking the host cells, the host body in places like, either the liver or the lungs or the skin. And so it's called graft versus host disease. And unfortunately, the donor cells decided to attack my lung cells. And that's why, it led to this disease.
Wow. What was going through your mind then?
I was absolutely devastated for about, 2 to 3 weeks there because I was riding on such a high,
Mm-hmm.
I had survived. I was in remission for so many years. Everybody was telling me I was doing great. I felt great. Nothing indicated to me that there was something wrong with me physically. And all of a sudden you get this news. And like what you said earlier, I went online. I did all this research
Yeah,
and
right.
everything told me that this disease was, eventually fatal. And
Oh,
it was the prognosis was, anything but promising, right? So it really affected how I saw the world. It was, it was pretty dark for a few weeks there, I have to admit.
Wow. So where are you today? Tell us what's going on in your life and in your world and how you're feeling.
Right. So today I'm happy to report that, this lung disease did not turn out to be, the end of the world like I once thought it would be. It's been, almost 3 years now it's been more than 3 years now since my diagnosis, and I'm not on any medication. My lung function has held relatively steady, which really amazes my doctors. I'm not on any medication, and I'm still able to do a lot of the things that other people do. I am very active in my life. I don't feel any impact at all, literally, with this lung disease. And I feel that I'm in a good place mentally. I have a good mindset about the things I have experienced and my life ahead. And I'm able to work full time, and I have a blog on the side.
Yes,
And
I was just
two
going to
cats.
ask you about that. The budding optimist. That led you to do all of that and share your story. How is that going, and what's it all about?
Right. So in 2018, I started a blog called The Budding Optimist. I started a blog because I just turned 30. I thought to myself, you know what? I've always wanted to write, but I always found excuses not to write.
That's
and
right.
it is really time to
No day
to
in the
start
week
writing.
called someday, right? You got to do it. And
Exactly.
good for you.
Exactly. So I forced myself to start, and I'm so happy I did. And when I started the blog, I thought about, what do I have to say to the world that I think is meaningful? And I thought, you know what? I've got this story that I think will help somebody out there, because it is not a story that you see every day, especially in someone as young as I am. And I want to show people that, you can have all these adversities in your life, and you don't have to let it break you. You can still climb up, even if you're scared, you can still face these challenges every day and make a choice to be happy.
What a beautiful
And
message.
and I'm not a true optimist, as I would say. Like, I was not born an optimist, as you can see. When I was young, I was always a worry wart. When I was going through the cancer journey, I wasn't always in a good place, mindset-wise. But it really was a learning progress for me to get here, to become more positive, more optimistic, and more hopeful. So I want to show people that it is possible. You just have to make a choice to become that way, and practice. It really is a muscle that you have to keep practicing.
Well, that is true, because it's easy to be an optimist when everything's going well and you feel great and you have a job and a good relationship. Sure, it's easy to be an optimist then. But in our world right now, there's a lot going on. People are suffering, and it's hard to be an optimist when all of that's happening, either to you or around you. What would you say is the secret to your optimism?
You know what? The one thing, I think this is the one key thing that I've learned in my cancer journey and my journey back to health, is to focus on the things that you can control. That's been really key in my recovery, both physically and mentally, is to let go of, there are a lot of things that we can't control that happens to us, right? But don't worry about that stuff. Only focus on what you can change and what's in front of you and what you can control. And once you train yourself to do only that, you realize you have a lot of power. You have a lot of power, a lot of things you can change. And I believe that's the key to optimism.
You will also focus a lot in your writings on gratitude and being grateful for the things that you have. How does that affect you?
I think being grateful is, a key to happiness. So the one thing that sort of kickstart kickstarted this gratitude journey in me was when I was first diagnosed with cancer. I lost my hair, right? Like I lost basically all my hair, my eyebrows, and I didn't look pretty, and I was, I wallowed in a lot of that, right? I worried about, will I ever look the same again, and things like that. And one day I attended this event called Look Good and Feel Better. And they basically is an event for women where, the event organizers, they give you makeup and show you techniques on how you can, make yourself
American
look better.
Cancer Society, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I know it well.
And so, yeah. So when I was, putting the makeup on myself for the first time in, months, I realized, oh my gosh, I still have my lashes. And that sort of, I don't know, something just woke me up. I was like, wow, I spent all this time, looking at all the things I've lost, like, all the hair on my head and everything that I've lost, that I forgot to look at what I still have, which is like my lashes, which really stood out, and that made me think, why don't I start noticing all the good things that I still have? Because, when I noticed my lashes, it made me feel a lot better. So that's how I really kickstarted this gratitude journey in me, that I made a conscious choice to notice the good things every day in my life. And that's been instrumental in helping me to become more optimistic, along with focusing on what I can do and what I can change.
Oh, what a story. You certainly are a budding optimist. And you also welcome people to share their stories with you and write guest posts on your blog. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's great. So now I've opened my blog up to, collaboration. I welcome stories and insights and tips from others that they may have to share with my audience. Because, I don't know everything, right? I want to learn from others and hear their stories and what they've done in their life to, become more optimistic or become more healthy. Just whatever insights or tips they have to help everybody to, live a more positive and healthier life.
I just love that. And I think it is so great to build a network of people, because I'm a big believer in everyone helping everyone else. And when you hear someone else's story, it helps to inspire all of us to do better in our own lives. And that's really why I wanted to talk with you, because I'm sure you have inspired many people through your words today. And if someone did want to share their story with you, where can they reach you?
The best way to reach me is by contacting me through my website. My website is buddingoptimist.com, buddingoptimist.com. And there is a section called Write for Me, where they can find information on how to submit a story. And I have a contact form on my blog where they can send an email to me, and that's how we can start the collaboration.
I hope someone listening will want to share their story with you, and hopefully they've been inspired by your story, because it is amazing. And I'm so glad that you are doing well today. Thank you very, very much for being so open and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Robin. It was a pleasure.
And thank you all for joining me today for Living Well with Robin Stoloff, empowering you to live a healthier life. Please be sure to subscribe, and we'll let you know about our most recent weekly episode. Until next time, please stay safe and keep living well.